going on, guys? Got one here today that another technician was doing maintenance. Seen the system was low on refrigerant. Found a leaky valve core and then replaced the valve core, but did not have approval to charge the system. So I'm going to be here today to re-leak check the system, make sure there's no other leaks. We're going to, if there's any more leaks, we'll fix them. We're going to evacuate the remaining R22 out of the system, and then we're going to recharge it with 422B. So let's get going. We got a bunch of units up here, but I believe it's this guy here. My model number, or my serial number, ends in 700 apparently. That's this one. All right. Let's open this bad boy up. We'll see if it has any more leaks. All right, we got the leak detector out. Oh, that one's leaking. Maybe you didn't replace the valve cores already. That one's leaking too. One thing you want to do when you're leak checking an RTU, or any unit for that matter, you want to make sure you get all your panels off, because you're probably going to end up having to take them all off anyway. So just right off the bat, take them all off. Now, some dildo mounted the disconnect on this panel, so now I have to unwire it to get this panel off. I thought maybe I would be able to lean it down, but there's not enough play in the wire here, so I have to unwire this to take it down. Luckily, they didn't come through the unit with the line side. Looks like they came through the curb down there, came up in here. So, but I still have to unwire my load side to get this panel off, because that's where all the capillary tubes and basically the meat of my my evaporator is. So let me unwire this, we'll get this panel off. All right, we got our evaporator opened up here. I'm gonna take a look at this fitting here. It kind of looks oily, but it's not. And here's where our metering device is. It's a fixed orifice, not a TXV. So let's fire up the leak detector. We'll go over all this. I should note that this leak detector, this Infinicon TechMate, which I probably need to replace soon, the sensor is right here. It's not in the wand. So you need to hold it on each area for a couple seconds so the refrigerant has a chance to move through the wand and hit the sensor. Some leak detectors, the sensor's right here on the tip, which is nice. It's basically an instantaneous response, but with this one and a lot of other ones, the sensor is actually in the device. So you have to give it a couple seconds. You can't just, blow right through everything like this and expecting it to pick it up. Sometimes you got to hold it on there a couple minutes. All right, we've worked our way through this side of the evaporator, checked all this. I'm not finding any leaks over on this side. I've also already checked the filter dryer. No leaks there. And now, one thing to note and keep an eye on is when the refrigeration pipes go through these chases here. It goes through here, goes through the burner section, and comes back out here in our compressor compartment. I've seen rub outs here before. So you make sure you want to check all this and get in here the best you can, just to make sure nothing's leaking inside there too. All right, I've pretty much been through everything at this point with the electronic leak detector, and the only two leaks that I found are on the valve cores. One here and one here. So we'll have to replace those. But as I said before, we're going to remove the remaining R22 out of this system, and we're going to evacuate it and weigh in fresh 422B. Now I know a lot of guys don't like that, but the 422B is about 1/3 the price, and I don't know how much longer this system's going to be in operation for anyway. They've already replaced one of these this year, which is this one right here, and there's 3 that this space occupies. There's 1, 2, and then that closest one there. So this one's probably on the chopping block in the next year or so anyway. So we're just really trying to get them through this summer with this. All right, we're going to pull those valve cores. We're going to recover everything out of the system. We're going to evacuate it and then weigh back in the 422. All right, we got all our stuff up here. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our valve core removers and we're going to hook one up to each one of these. We're going to pull the valve cores so we don't have that obstructing us, and we'll recover all the refrigerant and go to the next thing. All right, we got everything hooked up here. Everything's on. Let's double check everything's good and tight. It's tight. This is on. All right, now we can start our evacuation. So she's pulling pretty quick. Of course, there's not a whole lot left in this system. Let's let it do its thing. All right, while that's recovering, also today, we're gonna have to leak check this system here. This is actually another space altogether. It's the neighboring space to the one that does these 3 units here. 1, 2, 3. This is the neighbor unit. So this one was PM'd at the same time, and apparently it is low on refrigerant also. So we will leak check this one also once we get done with that other one. This one looks a little newer. It is. All right, well this one is only from, well, it's 2011. But this one at least does utilize 410A refrigerant. All right, once we finish with that one over there, or at least once we get it on vacuum, we'll start leak searching this one. If you look here, you can see the compressor, the base of it's sweating, and that means there's still refrigerant trapped in the oil down there. Some guys will heat it up, some guys will hit it with a hammer to try to get it freed up. So you know, it's hard to get that out of there, but we really want to get all that old R22 out before we put the 422 in. All right, we're almost there, guys. We almost got it all out. I actually hooked the vacuum pump up, the recovery machine up for a couple more minutes, try to pull some of that out of there. See, it's nice and frosty down there. That means we still got refrigerant down there. So still a little tiny bit left, but we're gonna get the rest of that out, and we're gonna do a nice solid pressure test on it. See, where this is just a straight air conditioner with a gas heat, this unit is not equipped with a crankcase heater. If it did have a crankcase heater, I probably could have got this refrigerant out of that oil a lot easier, because that oil would be warm. But where it's not, it's taking a while for it to all get out of there. All right, guys, we're about to initiate our pressure test with nitrogen. All right, we've got everything, got the nitrogen bottle hooked up, got everything here. We're using on the testo gauges, the pressure testing function. So we have our temperature hooked up, because it takes that into consideration with our temp compensation up here. So we are going to fill it up right now. Gonna put about 200 psi, maybe 225. Where this is R22, we don't need to go too crazy with it. and we will start the pressure test and see if it passes. All right, I actually took off the temperature for the temp compensation because it was doing all kinds of crazy stuff. It was going up and then down, even though the pressure wasn't changing. So I know that's a good, accurate way to do it, but I couldn't get it to act right. So I took the temperature probe off, and we're just going by regular pressure right now. And I restarted the test. We're about 2 minutes 40 seconds into it, so we'll see what happens from here. I think we're good. I just want to make sure I do a good pressure test on it. We'll let it go about 7 minutes, because also, I mean, we're not trying to make this thing, you know, we're not putting this thing in a beauty contest here. So we just want to get them through the summer, maybe even the fall again with the heater, and then maybe next year they'll think about replacing this. So, I mean, we're not trying to do anything crazy here. All right, guys, we went about 13 minutes, about the time it took me to change the oil in the vacuum pump and go down to the truck and get the vacuum pump and that type of stuff. So, looked like we gained some pressure, about 2 psi. That's where the temperature compensation would have came in, but like I said, I couldn't get it to act right. So I think we're good and tight here. So we're going to blow this nitrogen off. We're going to get our vacuum hooked up and get this thing pulled down. All right, guys, we just started our vacuum. We're going one hose setup here. We got our 3/8 hose hooked up to our suction here off our valve core, and we're going straight to our vacuum pump right there. We got our vacuum gauge, our micrometer, hooked up to our high side here. We're gonna let this thing pull. This is communicating with this. Once it hits 7,500 microns, it'll start showing up. We'll let that pull for a while and see what it gets down to. All right, one thing to note here with this app, and I'm kind of trying to feel my way through it, and I've watched a couple videos on it. This graph here is really just for our decay test. So once we get to a point up here where we're comfortable, we'll hit start, and then that's when this graph goes into effect. And then our hold time will start too, and it'll show a graph of either, it'll show a graph of our decay basically. So we're gonna wait till we get to our comfortable micron level, and then we'll start our decay test. Also, we're pulling our vacuum with our gas ballast open. I've got brand new oil in here, and once I get the microns down under 1,000, then I'll close the gas ballast and let her go to work. But right now, we're gonna have the gas ballast open and try to save our oil a little bit. And it should be there here in a couple minutes. We'll close her down and then let her eat. Yeah, guys, I switched over to the 2 hose setup. Just wasn't pulling down fast enough for me. I know it's better to do the 1 hose, so you can have your micron gauge as far away from the vacuum as possible. But let me show you this here. Our only high side hookup is on our hot gas line coming off our compressor. And then our only suction is on our suction side of our compressor. So really both those are just not far away from each other in correlation to the way the system's set up. So we got both of them set up, both hoses set up. We got our micron gauge there. I got this panel in front of my gauges and my micron gauge to keep the sun off of it a little bit. All right, but now we're gonna go over to that unit a couple units down and see. I already got the cover off of it. We're gonna leak check this, but I've already found some oil. Okay. Looks like I might have to evict the wasp today. All right, look. These have oil on, that has oil on it, and that has oil on it. So we're about to find out if it's valve cores leaking or if these threaded on pressure switches are leaking. So we're just gonna douse this stuff with oil right now. Soap, I meant. See what might be leaking. Like I said, another technician already PM'd this stuff, so this oil might just be from him taking his hoses off. We're not going to take any caps or anything off yet. We're just going to see if we can find the leak without disturbing anything. That seems like a lot of oil just from taking hoses off. We're going to let that sit on there a couple minutes and we'll take a look. See, I'm not seeing anything, at least not bubbles wise, on these here. Now this is the same style unit. They call this the York Sunline, except this one, like I said, is 410A, and this one's got micro channel coil too. It's got a micro channel condenser, so it's probably got a micro channel evaporator too. Of course, I don't know that for fact yet. I don't see anything real crazy right here. See, if those valve cores were leaking, the technician might have inadvertently fixed it just by putting his hoses on. All right, so I stand corrected. This is a tube and fin evaporator coil. You can get away with this with straight cooling applications, but you cannot do a tube and fin evap with a micro channel condenser or vice versa in a heat pump application, because the tube and fin holds a lot more refrigerant than the micro channel does. So it might work fine in cooling mode, but then once you switch over to heating mode, all of a sudden the system is overcharged and you have to let some out. When those micro channel coils first came out, people were making that mistake doing matchups. They would have a micro channel evap and a tube and fin outdoor, and wondering why it worked fine in cooling mode and not in heating mode, or vice versa. So every year you'd have to either take some out and then put some back in to make the thing work right, until they figured out, wow, we can't put a tube and fin outdoor with a micro channel indoor. So they got that straightened out though. Well, like I said, in a cooling application, it's fine. Heat pump application, not fine. All right, let's take a look here. We'll get the leak detector out. We'll check all this. It does look cruddy, pretty rusty, but doesn't necessarily mean it's leaking. Yeah, these valve cores are leaking too. It didn't show up right away, but when I loosened this cap, it hissed. Let's see if this one does it. Damn, that's tight. That one didn't hiss, but someone put that on there really tight. I'm guessing it was leaking. Yeah, these ones are leaking too. Yeah. This one not as bad, but it's still leaking. I did go all over the evap coil too, didn't find anything over here. So, looks like the valve cores on that side are bad too. Now, whenever you have a service port on a hot gas line, on a discharge line off the compressor, these are gonna go bad all the time, because there's so much heat coming out of here, it melts the material that the valve core is made out of. So I would say, if you guys maintenance a lot of these units, if you do PMs and stuff, I would change the valve cores on these every single PM. because they're going to burn up anyway. Valve core is cheap, and you should always have a valve core remover tool on your truck anyway. Just replace the valve core on a discharge line every PM. If you want to, replace both of them every PM, but definitely your discharge line, because these melt, and it doesn't take them long to start leaking. All right, we don't need to do anything as extensive as we're doing over there, where we're converting from R22 to 422. This one's already 410A, so we're just going to change these valve cores. We'll top the charge off, and we should be good to go on this one. All right, we got our valve core remover tool on. I'm going to go ahead and remove the valve core and get it taken out of there. Just remove this valve core and look at it. She's bent right over. That's crazy. That's why it was leaking. Got the valve cores replaced. I also removed the plastic caps and put brass ones in its place. I'm gonna hook up the, and I put them on, then doused it with soap to make sure they weren't gonna leak. So I'm gonna hook up the test those smart probes on this guy, and I'm gonna see how low it actually is. Put the panels and all back on. Checking back on this guy real quick. We're down to 403 microns. Gonna let that pull for a little while longer. Got this guy buttoned back up. We just gave it a cooling call. It just now came on. We got our probes hooked up. We're gonna see how this thing's doing. Might have to add a little bit. Like I said, when the guy PM'd it, he did say it was low on refrigerant charge, but did not do a leak search. So over here in the shade, we have our iPad set up. Check it out, see what is going on with it. You know, it's really not that low. It just started, so these pressures are going to come up. Let's let it run for a little while. It doesn't seem there's very much load in the space either. It's only 67.8 degrees in there. Let's see what kind of humidity it's got in there. So let's see, we are probe 971. So there's only 57% relative humidity in there also. Not too crazy in there. These pressures have stabilized more now. It is low. It might take a pound or two. Our suction temperature is only at 71 degrees. We've got about 5 degrees of subcooling, 38 degrees of superheat. So yeah, it's probably a little low. This is our supply temperature here. I'll probably add a pound or two. All right, yeah, we're gonna add some refrigerant to this guy, but for now, we're just gonna turn it back off because we're at almost the point where we're about to start the decay test on that one right there. So I am getting ready to turn this one off for now, and we will come back to it to add refrigerant. All right, we're down to 357, 56 microns. We're about to cut the vacuum off, and then we'll start our decay test. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna shut our valves off, and then we're gonna shut our pump off. And we're gonna give that a minute to kind of stabilize out a little bit. Then we'll start our decay. All right, after I turned it off, it got up pretty high, maybe around 750 or so, which might end up being okay. But I want to let it pull for a little while longer, and we will see what it really does get down to. As long as I can keep it below 1,000, I think I'm okay. But we'll see. All right, we got her down to 336 now. Let's try this again. Let's start our decay test. We'll see what happens. See, this right here, this line right here is 500. This line up here is 1,000. As long as I stay in between those two, or below that, or in between those two, I should be good. Now, I don't expect to keep this thing under 500, but I do expect it to keep it under 1,000. So we'll see what happens. All right, guys, she's been holding for about 8 minutes, 40 seconds, and it's got up to 843 microns. You can see when we first cut it off, it had a pretty significant spike, but now it is kind of plateaued. So I can live with that. As long as it's under 1,000, I'm okay. You know, usually the target is 500. You'd love to get it under 500 even after your decay test, but when you got old oil in this thing, this unit's at least 15 years old or so. We didn't have any significant leaks, but it's really hard to achieve 500 microns after your decay test with an older system like this. So as long as we're staying under 1,000 microns, I think I'm good. And we're almost at 10 minutes here, and we haven't went above 1,000. So we're about to charge this thing up with the 422B, and we'll see how it runs. All right, we're all set up here. We're gonna bleed this off. All right, we're good and bled off there. We have our testos set up for 422B, and we're about to start the charge. Let's see how much we actually hold here. 6 pounds, 8 ounces. So that's what we're gonna start with. We'll go ahead and put in everything that it'll take and have to probably trim it off from there. So what we're also gonna do is we're gonna open this up, our high side, and we're gonna open our ball valve here. And we're gonna bleed off right here also. All right, we got liquid there. I'm gonna close that back off. And when we open this up, then we'll take our micron gauge off. This micron gauge is good with a little bit of pressure on it. So as soon as we open that up, we'll take that off. All right, it's taken 3 pounds, 13 ounces, and I think that's about all it's gonna allow us to put in there without it running. So we are going to give it a call, and we'll have to put that panel, just kind of place it in front of there so we don't have a hole there, and finish putting the trim charge. What I'm actually going to do, because I actually can't get my panel on, at least not even place it in front of this gaping hole with my valve core removers on. So I am going to put my Schraders back in. I am going to put my hoses through this little hole here. That's what that hole is there for. And we're going to put our panel back on so we can charge this thing properly with the panel. The way we can do that is we can just close this off, and we can close our ball valve off here, ball valve here, and then close that ball valve. So all the refrigerant we're going to lose is basically just in our fitting here. So we're going to take that off. That should be all the refrigerant we lose. We're going to get these out of the way for now so we can put our valve cores. Ball valves on my hoses were too big to go through this hole here, but that's okay. With the valve cores off, I can sneak them out the side right here, and our condenser is shut. So that's good. All right, I think, yep, we're just in a startup delay now. As soon as we come out of the startup delay, this thing should start in cooling mode. All right, as it is right now, we got about a 16.5 degrees split. We are letting in a little bit of outside air. I'd say about this much from this hood. So that 72 degrees, that is mixed air. All right, let's come over here. We'll see how our refrigeration system's doing. All right, we have 7 degrees of subcooling, 45 degrees of superheat. Our suction temperature is only at 74. Our suction pressure is at 45. All right, and we've only added about 6 pounds so far. So we'll finish with the other 8 ounces and we'll see where it's at. All right, here's what our pressures and readings are. 56 on the low side. Our supply line temperature is 49 degrees. We have 11.7 degrees of superheat. 232 psi on our high side at 91 degrees liquid line temperature with about 19.4 degrees of subcooling. Our temperature split is about 16 degrees. I think I'm just gonna have to live with it the way this is, guys. It's not ideal, but of course this system isn't designed to run on 422B, it's designed to run on R22. But we gotta do what the customer wants. So I think that's gonna be about it for this unit. I'm going to pack this one up and then I'll move over to the one down there to top the charge off on that one. All right, guys, we're back over here on the 410A rooftop unit. We got our smart probes hooked up here. Sorry, the sun's kind of on it. Let me see if I can move this off into the shade a little more. All right, this is our supply temperature, our subcooling, superheat, head pressure, and suction pressure. So it's only been running for a couple minutes now, and we're gonna add about a pound. We're gonna add 1 pound and see where that gets us. It's not that low. It's actually not looking real bad at all, but it is slightly low. So we're gonna go ahead and put 1 pound in and see where that gets us. All right, we got our smart probes hooked up for all of our readings. I just really have this hooked up to charge with refrigerant. So we're gonna make sure we bleed off here. We got a good column of liquid coming out. And here is our scale. We're gonna go ahead and open this up. Open this side, open this valve up. And we're going to, we're gonna add 1 pound. Once it hits 1 pound, we'll shut it off and let it eat that for a little while and see what it's doing. All right, she's been going for about 10 minutes with that 1 pound I added. Not very much different. I did get my supply temperature down. Six degrees of subcooling, 17 degrees of superheat. I might add a few more ounces, but I think we're pretty close. All right, I put about 5 more ounces in it, and we're looking pretty good here. That's our supply temperature there, 47 degrees. Let's take a look at our split. Yeah, man, we are. We must be pulling in some supply air too at 61 degrees, but we're looking pretty good on this one. Let's go back to AC and refrigeration. Almost 3 degrees of superheat, 8 degrees of subcooling. We put a total of 1 pound, 5 ounces in. So All right, I'm at the button this one up. I think I'm good to go here. All right, guys, just finished up with those couple units there. Let me know what you guys think about that 422B. I mean, it's been around for quite a while, and of course, R22 drop-ins have been around for a while too. A lot of guys don't use them. A lot of guys say, you know, if it takes R22, that's what it's going to get. And I respect that. I understand that, but the R22 is very expensive now. It's expensive to buy, and it's even more expensive to sell to the customer. So we save the customer a lot of money putting that 422 in it. And like I said, I am not putting this thing in a beauty pageant. I'm just trying to get it through this summer, probably the heating season, and they'll start thinking about replacing that unit next summer, next spring, something like that. So, you know, it came out working good. I have full confidence that this thing will run this summer. It'll probably run next summer too, you know, unless something catastrophic fails, but I don't see that happening, but you never know. But all right, guys, well, that's it for this one. Please give this video a thumbs up if you like it, and please consider subscribing to the channel. I know a lot of you are watching that aren't subscribed, and I'd really love to get you guys to subscribe to the channel so we can grow this thing into something really nice. So, all right, guys, that's it for this one. I'm off to the next one.